I was still working as an actor, but it became a little bit harder. I tried to tell myself that it wasn't because I came out. I began to work a lot for the Victory Fund and Human Rights Campaign and GLAAD, and I would go all over the country, go to these fundraisers, give a little speech, shake hands, sign autographs. I was determined to be 100% optimistic about it, that my life maybe had taken a turn, but my work as an activist or as a communicator became as important or more important than whether or not I was booking a guest star part on Murder, She Wrote. I came to Atlanta to do the Human Rights Campaign dinner, and I got to introduce Governor Ann Richards from Texas. And it was super exciting. They did this fashion show that started the night. It was super sexy, and all these really hot guys and women walked by me. And the last model was this guy who got this huge ovation, like people like, yeah, woo! And I asked the guys at my table, who is this person that had all this aura around him? And they told me his name was Richie Arpino. And I said, wait a minute, I know him. I have met him 2 years earlier by chance in West Hollywood, where we went to the same Mongolian barbecue restaurant and sat at different tables and started talking and kind of flirting, but I was still with Jim, so we didn't do anything. He knew everybody and was just a bright light of sunshine. After the event, we are in the lobby of the World Congress Center, this big fancy place downtown, and I see Richie, and the very first thing I say to him is, hey Richie, guess what? I'm not married anymore. He said, great, neither am I. Let's get married. And then he got down on his knee and said, will you marry me? And I said, yes, but let's have a date first. We went out and we partied and we had fun and we woke up in the same bed. And then we literally have been together since that day for 26 years. Richie's totally different than me. He's much more social, much more outgoing, much more in the world. But we also are able to get up in the morning and look at the world the same way. He loved my life as an actor. I did a couple big plays and he saw them like 3 times. And then I was in this movie called Relax, It's Just Sex with Jennifer Tilly and Lori Petty, and it premiered at Sundance. And it was this beautiful, fun, little tiny independent movie that was totally ahead of its time. Because I was rehearsing this play in Los Angeles, I couldn't go except for one day. But Richie flew to Sundance and he was just part of it. And it was so exciting for me to have somebody that was so enthusiastic about my career. I moved to New York City thinking I was going to do more theater. And September 11th happened. The world changed. I ended up renting a car and driving from New York City that week down to Atlanta, giving myself permission to congratulate myself on a career that I had, and also giving myself permission to maybe find something else to do. I had always been a really good cook, and I believe that food fosters communication, brings people together, and continues to tell the story. And so for me, I thought, well, maybe I could go into the restaurant business. I was fortunate enough to be introduced to Super Jenny, who is an amazing Atlanta restaurateur, former actor. We talked and we had lots in common. She knew a lot of the same people I knew and worked with in Los Angeles. And she said, yeah, come in the kitchen with me and see what you can do. She taught me her approach to food, which was very improvisational, not recipe driven, but pull from here and pull from there. And somehow it just clicked with me. I just got it. I understood what she was trying to do. She's creating these pieces of art, really, with color and taste and flavor profile. She said, I think you're ready. Go open your own place. And I was like, Jenny, I don't want to. Please open one with me. Let's do something together. And she said, no, you don't need me. You think you do, but you don't need me. I'll be there for you every step of the way, but you're going to do better if you open this by yourself. The day that I opened, she closed her restaurant and put a sign on the door and said, I'm going to Metro Fresh. Why don't you join me? I believed that it would be successful if people who came there had a personal buy-in to the idea of Metro Fresh. So in that vein, I thought, if they got to know me personally, they would see my commitment. They would see where I come from. They would know the stories behind this person that's creating this food. Now I'm in this world where I'm not hiding parts of me. I'm telling the story of who I am. First, it was just about the restaurant, but then it became about Richie and me and something funny the dog did. I would talk about my parents a lot. I would talk about the influences of my childhood in my cooking and in who I became as an adult. 10 years later, I created a cookbook that is called Food and Thought. There was a proposition on the California ballot that was going to disallow gay marriage. It was sort of proactive on the religious right side, saying we will only acknowledge marriage between a man and a woman. And unfortunately, when that issue came up, the gay community was exhausted. We had spent 14 or 15 years fighting AIDS, so that initiative passed 60-40. And it was heartbreaking. Marriage has something like 140 actual advantages that if it was denied to a certain segment of the population because of their sexuality, we were second-class citizens. I became the quiet activism of everyday life, telling my story on the blog, living in a neighborhood, owning a business, inviting all kinds of people into my life. That's how you push that ball of acceptance over time. The vocabulary in the public started to change in the middle of the 2000s. And then we got the right to marry in that Supreme Court decision. So in 2017, in a little tiny backyard service officiated by a local gay rabbi, even though neither Richie and I are Jewish, we got married. My parents were married for 50-something years before they died. Was it always sweet and, butterflies? No. But I remember on the day that my dad died, I remember my mom holding his hand, saying, "Quint, don't leave me." I mean, they'd been together from age 24 to 85. Not everybody cares about that, and that's fine. I have no judgment about that at all. But for me, this is what I want. I want to be able to come home and have somebody to sit at the table with and talk to, who will eat my food that I love to prepare. Just recently, we renovated our kitchen because we didn't have a kitchen table. And I really wanted to grow old with somebody sitting at a kitchen table talking. Sometimes you think it's physical, how can it make you happy? But the truth is that in the last 2 months since we moved into that kitchen, we have had dinner at that table 90% of the time. And we turn off the television, we put on a little music, I lower the lights, and we sit there and just talk. And I think that after 26 years, if you're able to do that with the same person, how lucky is that? I think making a relationship work shouldn't be all work. It should just be what you want. I'm sure I drive him crazy sometimes. I know I do. But at the end of the day, I think that when, we get in that bed and we hold each other's hand when we're falling asleep, what more can you ask for? An old friend of mine who's still an actor in Hollywood called me and said that he was creating and co-writing this series called After Forever. And he wanted me to play his husband. And I was like, Kevin, I haven't been on film in literally 20 years. He said, doesn't matter. You're the person I want. So I read the script and it was beautifully written, and the part that he wanted me to play was super rangy. It was tragic but funny, and you got to cry and you got to laugh and you got to show love and connection. It's about this man who loses his husband of 15 years to a bad cancer diagnosis. He's in his 50s. He's like, how am I going to go on after forever? I play the guy who dies. I'm in his mind the whole time. So the story is told in flashback. So you see actually me getting the diagnosis and me going through the illness and then me dying. We go to the Emmy Awards and we win 5 Emmy Awards. One of them that I have here is for the best digital series. It's just been an incredible experience because I went back into my former life in front of the camera, playing a part, and I had none of my previous angst. I 100% am certain that my life is better because I came out. I have this one-man show that I wrote and have been performing for the last couple of years called You Better Call Your Mother. And I talk about my relationship with my parents, and I talk about coming to terms with my sexuality. I talk about my high school years where I was totally different and people called me a fag even though I didn't know I was a fag. And I talk about all those moments that became my life. Not only is it an interesting story, but it's pretty good theater. People have really enjoyed it. I was lucky enough to get into a theater festival in New York City, so I got to do it in New York City on 42nd Street. This is a set piece that I do when I talk about the very first time I met Richie. Richie Arpino and I met for the first time twice. Once when I wasn't ready, and then again when I was. One spring day in West Hollywood, I was coming out of the Bank of America on Santa Monica Boulevard, and this guy walked toward me. He had his hair all slicked back. He had on these really fancy wraparound shades and an enormous smile on his face. And he wasn't wearing a shirt. It was warm out, but it wasn't that warm. Who the heck is that? We cruised each other like you do. And then not so much because I was hungry, but I think I wanted to see what would happen. I suddenly turned and went in the Mongolian barbecue joint. Of course he followed me. We struck up a conversation, and according to Richie, he was a little skeptical of my show business credentials. I'm guessing he wasn't in the party of five demographic. Nevertheless, we definitely had a connection, had a nice lunch together at separate tables. And he must have liked me, because before we parted, he had written down all his telephone numbers in my brand new day planner. If you were alive before cell phones, you know you kept your life in a Firefax. After lunch, I offered to drive him back to his hotel, where he asked me to come up to his room to make out with him. I said, thank you very much for the invitation, but I can't. I've got to get to an audition. And I'm married. He sighed, got out of the car, and that was it. Until it wasn't. In my 60s, I'm able to look back at my life and know that that process of coming to terms with my sexuality, slowly coming out to myself, coming out to my friends and family, finally coming out in the world and in the press and owning that, changed my life. And it changed my life as an artist, it changed my life as a human being, it changed my life as a philanthropist, as an activist. We are not Richie and Mitchell, the gay couple down the street. We are Richie and Mitchell, the family down the street. And the last line of my show, I say, now hopefully when that young person in Kansas or Kenya or Kennesaw starts to understand their sexuality, they'll be able to look at that old married gay couple down the street, and it won't be special. It'll just be life. That's what I'm most proud of. Being able to be my age, knowing that all of this has happened and all of this life is behind me. I feel like the rest is gravy. The rest is a gift. It's all a gift. But whatever happens in the future, I hope I remember this moment, because I think that is going to be super important as I get older. To know that I have had a good life that's not usual. And one of the reasons, as my former partner Jim said, is because I got to be gay. When I was doing an interview for my play in Jamestown, New York, where I grew up, he said, so Mitchell, is it getting harder now? And I said, why would you say that? It's not harder. For me, it's much easier. For me, living in Midtown Atlanta in this incredibly culturally diverse, liberal area where people are just accepting of whoever you are, and not only accepted, but actually encouraged, I think it's getting easier. But then I'm reminded that even in Cobb County, Georgia, a teacher gets fired because she teaches a book that was banned. This is the example that I use in my head to think how nuts this is. Avery, who lives across the street from me, is 6 years old. She has always been over here playing ball with our dog. She loves Richie and me. We are part of her life. In theory, if she lived in Orlando and she went to school with a picture of Richie and me saying, these are my best friends who live across the street, they're Richie and Mitchell and they've been married for 26 years, that teacher wouldn't be able to explain that or talk about that at all for fear of being fired. That to me is mind-blowing and incredibly sad. And where are all these people that think that that is an okay thing to do? Taking books out of schools that talk about Billy who has 2 dads because it might be a problem for a child? This is what I don't understand. These people who have kids in grade school are 20 years younger than me. Where have they been? Who has brought them up? That makes me absolutely crazy. And it surprises me because it's not my life. My life is totally easier. But one state away, one county away, it's totally different. They make arguments about fucking bathrooms. They don't want a transgendered woman who presents as a woman to be able to go into a girl's bathroom. That doesn't make any sense. She's not gonna go into the boys' bathroom. She's a woman. Why is that an issue? I think the reason is if you're devoid of ideas and you want somebody to follow you, you've got to give them something to fear. If we're all afraid of that, we're going to be a group. You're going to give me money and you're going to prop me up and put me in power and that'll be good for me. But you've done it because I've made you afraid of them. And that's fucking wrong. Is it ever going to end? I thought so. We all thought getting gay marriage was the end. We thought we were on cruise control and now it's backstepping. It just reinforces that we just have to keep telling our story, keep putting it out there, keep living our lives, being examples. And P.S., why it's good that you're doing this.